Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking some truly fascinating research on how an unconventional appearance, specifically having visible tattoos, impacts the effectiveness of social media influencers. Think about it for a second. Have you ever wondered why you instantly trust certain people on your feed, but scroll right past others without a second thought? A lot of the time, we just assume that a flawless, polished look is the ultimate key to building a massive audience. But, as we're about to see, the actual data tells a completely different and frankly a really surprising story.
Okay, here's our agenda for today. First, introduction and theoretical background. Second, hypotheses development. Third, research methodology. Fourth, research findings. And finally, discussion and conclusion. Let's dive right in.
Section 1. Introduction and theoretical background. Setting the academic stage. To really understand this, we first have to establish the foundational theories that explain exactly why we trust the faces we see on our screens. The foundation of our explainer today rests on a 2022 study published in the Journal of Retailing and Consumer Services. The researchers, Fernandez, Nettleship, and Pinto, set out to investigate a pretty crucial gap in modern marketing. You see, we already know an influencer's physical appearance plays a massive role in how persuasive they are, but they wanted to know, how does a specifically unconventional look, like having highly visible tattoos, actually change a follower's perception of them?
Before we get into the tattoos, let's quickly define our subject here: social media influencers, or SMIs. Unlike your traditional celebrities who get famous through, acting in movies or playing professional sports, SMIs are online micro-celebrities. They build their influence purely through relatable, daily narratives and really authentic engagement. They don't just endorse a product, they integrate it into a lifestyle that their followers feel intimately connected to.
Now, when brands are picking out these influencers, the academic literature generally leans on two main models to figure out how persuasive they'll actually be. First up is the source credibility model, which basically asks, is this person trustworthy and are they a legit expert in their field? And second is the source attractiveness model. This goes way beyond just physical beauty to ask, is this person likable? Are they familiar? Are they similar to me? And both of these models suggest that visual cues are absolutely crucial in building those positive attitudes.
But here's where human psychology kind of complicates things. When we evaluate these influencers, our brains just don't have the time to process every single detail. So we take cognitive shortcuts. We leverage something called the stereotype content model. This is a theory that says whenever we meet someone, or even just see them pop up on our screen, we instantly, and usually subconsciously, assess them on two fundamental dimensions: warmth, which means what are their intentions toward me, and competence, which means do they actually have the ability to carry out those intentions.
Section 2. Hypotheses development. Predicting the stigma.
So what's super interesting here is how the authors formulated their initial expectations. They based them entirely on historical biases. Driven by the old "what is beautiful is good" stereotype, the researchers logically hypothesized that visible tattoos would negatively impact an influencer's credibility. Drawing from older studies, they predicted a clear penalty for tattooed influencers, basically that they'd be rated significantly lower in both warmth and competence. They also guessed this penalty would hit male influencers harder and be much stronger in the beauty domain, where, let's face it, traditional perfection is usually the prize, compared to the fitness domain, where body art is already way more normalized.
If you look at the theoretical model they drew up for both beauty and fitness, the anticipated downward trend is pretty stark. The dotted lines up top represent influencers without tattoos staying nice and high. The solid lines represent the tattooed influencers, and you can see a major expected drop-off. The researchers were totally prepared for tattooed influencers to score lower across the board, expecting tattooed men in the beauty category to fall the absolute furthest.
Section 3. Research methodology. Testing the theories.
To rigorously test all these negative assumptions, the researchers put together a really clever experimental design. Step 1, they set up what's called a 2x2x2 factorial design. That just means they tested gender, male versus female, tattoo presence, tattooed versus non-tattooed, and domain, beauty versus fitness. Step 2, they created 8 hypothetical influencer scenarios. They took photos of equally attractive male and female models, and then digitally manipulated a highly visible neck tattoo onto half of them. Step 3, they showed one of these 8 profiles to 260 young adults and asked them to rate the influencer on attractiveness, trustworthiness, expertise, and whether they'd actually recommend them to a friend. Now, they specifically targeted young adults, people between the ages of 18 and 34. Why? Well, because they're the heaviest, most active users on social media, and they're the primary consumers of influencer marketing. It's also really important to note that almost 20%, 19.6% to be exact, of the respondents actually had tattoos themselves. That perfectly reflects modern demographic realities and makes sure the sample really represents today's consumer base.
Section 4. Research findings, the plot twist.
All right, let's get to the results, because this builds into an unexpected paradigm shift. The huge question here is, did the audience actually reject the tattooed influencers, just like the historical literature and the researchers' own hypotheses said they would? Did that old, what is beautiful is good stereotype actually hold up in today's social media landscape?
Astonishingly, the data showed the exact opposite. When the results poured in, the solid lines from that earlier expected graph didn't drop at all. They actually went up. Tattooed influencers scored significantly higher in trustworthiness, expertise, and intention to recommend compared to the ones without tattoos. That historical stigma they were bracing for, it completely failed to materialize. No way around it. The data totally flipped the script.
So instead of a penalty, the researchers discovered what we're calling a tattoo premium. Slapping a visible neck tattoo on these models didn't hurt their physical attractiveness ratings one bit. But more importantly, it served as this incredibly powerful signal of authenticity. The audience looked at the tattooed influencers and basically deemed them more capable, more well-intentioned, and simply more worth following than the influencers sporting a conventional, pristine look.
Now, to be fair, there are a few fascinating little nuances in this data. First off, age definitely played a role. While the older respondents in the 18 to 34 bracket were slightly more critical, the younger end of the audience overwhelmingly embraced the tattoos. Second, remember that domain mismatch the researchers expected? It just didn't happen. Tattoos were embraced just as warmly in the beauty domain as they were over in fitness. The absolute only caveat was a really minor dip in physical attractiveness ratings, specifically for tattooed male beauty influencers. But even then, their trustworthiness and competence didn't suffer at all. It just proves that our expectations of physical appearance are varying wildly depending on context and generation.
Section 5. Discussion and conclusion. New canons of influence.
Here's what you really need to take away from this. These findings completely disrupt the traditional marketing playbooks. The researchers flat out conclude that new canons of influence apply to younger generations. Look, back in the day, influencers engaged in what academics call glamour labor, basically presenting a highly idealized, flawlessly aesthetic version of themselves. But for today's modern consumers, that hyper-perfect glamour labor is being thrown out in favor of a demand for raw, unfiltered realness. Having a tattoo signals that you're an actual individual, not just a walking corporate billboard. Ultimately, this explainer proves that brands and influencers alike really need to adopt a fresh perspective. Brands absolutely have to demystify the stigma around body art. Relying just on traditional, clean-cut vanity metrics is totally outdated now. Inclusivity and unconventional looks are literally measurable assets for building genuine trust. And for the influencers themselves, that intense pressure you might feel to be physically flawless might actually be working against you. Displaying a less perfect, true-to-life appearance, tattoos, and the whole shebang is exactly what makes your audience truly believe in you.
This explainer was based on that eye-opening 2022 study by Fernandez, Nettleship, and Pinto in the Journal of Retailing and Consumer Services. So the next time you're scrolling through your feed and you double-tap a post, I want you to ask yourself, are you trusting that influencer because they look perfectly conventional, or is it because their unconventional appearance finally makes them look real?